The water was still running when she heard the click. Cold, metallic, unmistakable. Corporal Maya Jensen froze. Her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat. Through the steam, she could see the barrel pointed directly at her temple. 3 cadets stood in the doorway of the communal shower block at Fort Benning, their faces obscured by shadow and condensation, but their intent was crystal clear. This wasn't hazing. This wasn't a joke. And in that moment, standing there vulnerable and exposed in a Georgia military facility, Maya understood that what happened next would define not just her Army career, but the person she would become. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. Maya had joined the academy with her father's blessing still warm in her ears. Colonel Jensen had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, and she'd grown up on military bases believing that honor lived in those hallowed halls. But 6 months into her training at one of America's toughest military academies, she'd learned a different truth. Power, unchecked, became poison. The 3 cadets blocking her exit were the sons of senior Pentagon officials, untouchable in every way that mattered in the military hierarchy. And they knew it. Her hand reached slowly for the shower valve. She turned off the water. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. "You reported us to the commanding officer," one of them said. His voice was steady, almost casual, as if he were commenting on the Atlanta heat outside. The gun didn't waver. Maya had reported them. 2 weeks earlier, she'd witnessed them assaulting a younger recruit behind the barracks. She'd done what the Uniform Code of Military Justice required, what her father would have done. She'd filed a formal complaint with the Inspector General. The investigation had been buried within 48 hours by higher-ups. She thought that was the end of it. She was wrong. "I did what was right," she said, her voice quieter than she wanted, but stronger than she felt. Water dripped from her hair, each drop marking seconds that felt like hours in the humid southern air. The cadet with the gun smiled. Right doesn't matter in the military. Rank does. Connections do. Maya's mind raced through options, each one narrowing into impossibility. She could scream, but the block was in the isolated corner of the base, deliberately chosen. She could fight, but physics and position weren't on her side. She could beg, but something in her father's voice, something in her own reflection she'd seen that morning in her Fort Benning quarters, wouldn't allow it. So she did something none of them expected. She stepped forward, not toward the door, toward the gun. One step, then another, until the barrel pressed against her sternum. The cadet's hand trembled, just slightly, but enough. "If you're going to do this," Maya said, her eyes locked on his, "then do it. But you'll have to live with it. Every single day. You'll see my face when you salute the flag. You'll hear my voice when someone asks you what the uniform means." She paused, letting the weight settle. "Is protecting your secret worth that price? Is it worth dishonoring everything this country stands for?" The shower block had never been quieter. Even the old pipes seemed to hold their breath. The trembling in his hand spread to his arm. Behind him, one of the other cadets shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, man," he muttered. "This is too far. We'll get court-martialed." What Maya didn't know was that someone had heard. Captain Sarah Chen, the base's ethics officer and a West Point graduate, had been following her own investigation. She'd placed a recording device in the block after receiving an anonymous tip through the military's new reporting app. And now she stood just outside with 3 military police officers, having heard every word, her hand already on her radio, calling for backup. The door burst open with a force that shattered the suspended moment. The gun clattered to the concrete floor. MP hands pulled the cadets backward, away from Maya, who stood there, still dripping, still steady, still refusing to collapse, even though every cell in her body wanted to. The investigation that followed wasn't buried this time. Maya's testimony, backed by irrefutable audio evidence, brought down not just 3 cadets, but exposed a protection network that reached the Pentagon. Congressional hearings were held. Reforms were implemented across all U.S. military academies. Anonymous reporting channels were strengthened. The military's culture began to shift slowly, like an aircraft carrier changing course. 2 years later, Lieutenant Maya Jensen graduated top of her class. Her father watched from the front row at the ceremony, tears streaming down his weathered face as the American flag rippled in the breeze. But what stayed with everyone who knew the story wasn't her rank or her Bronze Star. It was the moment she chose courage over survival, conviction over silence. Because integrity isn't about safety. It's about who you remain when everything tries to break you. And on that morning, in a shower block at a Georgia military base filled with steam and fear, a young American soldier stood her ground and reminded 3 men what they'd forgotten: that true strength is measured not by what you can take from others, but by what you refuse to surrender in yourself.